You've probably seen those polished day in the life of a software engineer videos all over. You know, the ones where you see a person wake up in a spotless apartment, sip a latte, type a little code, hop on a few calls, then close the laptop and head out on the perfect evening. Yeah, that's not my reality. I'm a husband and a dad, and my journey into tech didn't come from a computer science degree or a bootcamp that promised me a job. My first real yes came from a software engineering apprenticeship, and that's where I learned what this career is really about. And guess what? It's not as simple or glamorous as it looks online, but I can promise it is fulfilling. In this video, I want to show you what software engineers actually do, not the curated highlight reel version that you're used to seeing. But from stand-ups that make you sweat, to spending hours untangling a single defect, to explaining technical problems in plain English, this is what my day looks like. And if you're considering this career, you deserve to see both the rewarding moments and the uncomfortable ones. So what does a real day look like? It all starts with the daily stand. This is when the team comes together and shares what was accomplished the previous day, what work is planned for today, and if you're facing any blockers. On a good day, stand-up goes pretty smooth. You're feeling great, you share your progress, your team nods, and you're moving forward. But then, there are the days like the ones I'll never forget. My team was working on a feature that was already behind, and I had a critical defect that just wouldn't budge. Day after day, my update was the same. Day 1, working on it. Day 2, still working on it. Day 3, I think I can get it today. At this point, I felt like I was failing and didn't even want to admit it. By the 4th day, I didn't even want to speak. I had to face the hardest truth of my early career, and that was that I couldn't fix it alone because I needed help. That was a hard lesson, but a necessary one. And being a software engineer isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about knowing when to lean on your team to keep making progress and moving forward. This was something I had to learn the hard way. But after stand-up, it's actually time to get to work. Most people think this is when you're actually going to start writing code from scratch, but more often than not, this means I'm tackling a new defect. When most people think of software engineering, they think it's all about building new features and sitting down and bringing their own ideas to life. But the reality is, when you're working for a company, you're not building your dream app. You're implementing their business objectives. And it can feel repetitive, but depending on the size of the company, the code you write actually has the chance to impact a lot of lives simply because of scale. But most days you'll spend much more time debugging than you do writing new code. I remember when I first got started, I would spend days trying to fix a single defect. I would basically go trial and error, guessing and hoping a fix would stick. I even caught myself thinking, am I prepared for this? And the answer was no, but my apprenticeship did walk me through the real process, which I'm still learning to this day. Over time, though, I learned that the key to debugging isn't a magical fix. It's actually a thoughtful process. You don't start with the code, you start with the error logs to see what the error is and how the code is reacting. Then you move on to reproducing that error and ultimately a fix. This process saves me so much time. But here's the part that keeps me going. When you finally solve that defect, the weight is lifted from your shoulders instantly. And that small fix can mean huge progress for the entire team. And that's when you realize the value isn't in writing perfect code. It's in solving real problems, even those messy ones. And it's a skill you can only learn by actually doing the work. And speaking of process, that's just one part of the problem. Sometimes the issue isn't even the code itself, but in the communication. And that's where the next part of my day comes in, collaboration. One of the biggest misconceptions about this job is that it's just you and a screen. I'm sorry to say you aren't always working alone in a dark room like some hacker. Instead, collaboration is everywhere. You're explaining issues to non-technical managers, working with QA team who test your work from every angle, or even helping teammates who just might be stuck on their own work. The truth is, your most important skill isn't your ability to code, it's communication. And for me, that's where being a dad has become my secret weapon, because explaining a defect to a product manager isn't all that different from breaking something down for a 6-year-old. You basically have to meet them where they are. You can't just throw a bunch of jargon out and expect them to get it. You have to have the patience to explain the why behind the what. And I've had product managers and business analysts tell me how helpful I am simply because they appreciate that I don't just speak to them in code. I've learned that if you can't break something down for others, you can be the smartest person in the room, but you're not helping anyone. The truth of engineering is it's not just about solving problems with code. It's about making sure the people around you understand what's happening so everyone can move forward together. And if you want to grow in your career, that's the superpower that gets you noticed. It's the difference between a good developer and a great teammate. All of this happens in a typical day, but it's not the whole story. What you don't see in those other videos is the rest of my life, the parts that make me a better engineer. So here's where my day really breaks down from those glossy videos. When I work from home, my breaks aren't about going to grab a coffee or hopping on the bike. They're things like throwing my daughter's dance clothes in the washer to make sure they're ready for her practice later, or stepping away to make sure she fed her fish because she's still trying to work her way up to a dog. So for me, being a developer isn't something that happens in a vacuum. It overlaps with every other part of my life. And for you, maybe that's taking a break to walk the dog or grabbing a call to handle some other business or maybe even heading out for your evening workout. Whatever it is, you've got a whole life that happens outside of that IDE. And over time, I've realized something important. All of these things have made me a better engineer, and maybe you can relate. Juggling life teaches patience, it teaches empathy and compassion. Explaining a defect, like I mentioned earlier, isn't all that different from talking to a 6-year-old. You basically have to meet them where they are. And that goes for family, teammates, or just some friend who wants to know what you do all day. Those overlaps, they've made me sharper, they've made me a better developer, and they've made me a better teammate. You just have to learn to solve problems in a world that isn't always clean and predictable, and that's the real skill. So what do software engineers actually do? We stand up and sometimes admit when we're stuck. We debug more than we create. We collaborate constantly. And for some of us, we take breaks not for the perfect coffee, but to make sure our families are taken care of. The version you see in those other videos is neat and it's aesthetic, but the real thing, it's messy, it's human, and incredibly rewarding when things finally click. So if this gave you a more honest view of what this career is actually like, hit the like button, subscribe for more behind the scenes in tech, and don't forget to let me know your thoughts in the comments.